Today, I am honored to introduce a dear friend of many of us in the room today, His Excellency Juan Manuel Santos, President of Colombia. Before I do, I want to thank the Colombian American Association for their partnership today, and I want to thank Christian Merli and his team. I also want to welcome my good friend from CNBC, anchor Michelle Caruso-Cabrera, who will interview President Santos this afternoon. Thank you, Michelle. And I want to give a special welcome to Maria Ángela Holguín, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Juan Carlos Pinzón, Ambassador of Colombia to the United States, Maria Emma Mejia, Permanent Representative of Colombia, and the full delegation of Colombia, of the Colombian government that is here with us today. And I'd also, with your permission, President Santos, like to welcome a very special guest who just joined us, Felipe Calderón, the former president of Mexico. Welcome as well. Finally, I want to welcome everyone that is tuning in at our webcast, which will be broadcast live, and then you'll be able to get it as well in our archives. And I want to thank Telefonica, our webcast sponsor. President Santos really needs no introduction. Over his extraordinary career, which spans the public and private sectors, he has shown unwavering commitment to Colombia and the region as Minister of Foreign Trade, Minister of Finance, Minister of Defense, and now in his second term as President. He has helped define Colombia as it is today and propelled the country to a new position on the global stage. As a result, markets trust in the President's disciplined macroeconomic policy. Colombia is weathering the economic slowdown in the region well, with GDP continuing not only to expand, but outpace most of the other countries in Latin America. And of course, his vision and determination in the peace process with the FARC, including his historic trip to Havana last week, and the subsequent breakthrough in negotiations, bring real peace for the first time in a half a century within reach. With that, I would like to turn it over to my dear friend, Michelle, who will interview President Santos. Michelle joined CNBC in 1998 and today serves as their chief international correspondent. And I will only say that if you turn on CNBC in the morning, or you turn on CNBC at lunch, or you look and you see almost anything going on the international stage, you will find Michelle. So I think the two of you are going to make a great team, and with that, I pass the microphone to you.
Thank you, Susan. It was an honor to be asked to do this, a real pleasure. President Santos, great to have you here. So let's talk about the peace agreement, the huge news in the last week. You've been applauded, you've been criticized. What does this audience need to know? What's the most important thing you can tell them right now about the state of the peace process?
Thank you, Michelle. But first of all, I want to thank all of you for being here. I want to thank also the Council of the Americas and the Colombian American Chamber and the sponsors, and a special say for my friend Felipe Calderón. Someday we can, not today, but we can tell the world how, for example, we work together in many issues, but one of the things that we did that I'm most proud of is the Pacific Alliance, how we created it, how we launched it, and how today it's the most successful integration process in the history of Latin America. And you were very much responsible for that, Felipe. Thank you for being our friend. What can I tell this audience about the peace process? I can tell them with no doubt whatsoever that it's the best thing that happened to Colombia in many, many years, that the effects of this peace process, when and if, and I'm sure that we will finish it, will be very, very positive in every respect. I see many investors in Colombia. I see many people who know Colombia, others who are interested in Colombia. And what I can tell them is there is not one dot, not one comma in what we have negotiated that will affect you negatively. Everything is positive, and I will tell you why. This war has been a tremendous cost. It has represented a tremendous cost for Colombia. It's a war that has gone on for more than 50 years. It's like when you try to drive around in your car with your handbrake on. It's been a cost in every respect. The economic cost, the social cost, the political cost, the cost in terms of international prestige, the cost in human lives and in victims. And to be able to do away with this tremendous obstacle, with this break, to simply unleash the potential that Colombia has, well, you can imagine what this represents. If we have already achieved what we have achieved so far, we are leaders in economic performance, in social inclusion, reduction of poverty, reduction of extreme poverty, in the creation of employment. In all these respects, we are now leaders in the region. Can you imagine what we could do without this break, without this cost of the war? And when you analyze, and I encourage you to do that, to analyze the word by word what we have negotiated, you will find that there is nothing that will affect negatively our economic performance, foreign investors or national investors, businessmen, even in the agricultural side, which is the only issue of public policy that we negotiated with the FARC. What we negotiated was simply what we have to do anyway, with or without FARC. More public goods, more roads, more schools, more hospitals, more access of the peasants to land without expropriating anybody. Any Colombian that is cultivating his land legally will only benefit because the rural areas are going to receive more investment. So nothing that we have negotiated will affect us and affect the business community or the investor community negatively. The impact on economic growth is going to be very positive. There have been many calculations. I would say on average, and I'm using a conservative estimate, the growth of the country could increase around 1.5% forever. This is a very significant figure. If we grew last year 4.7%, and our objective is to grow between 4.5% and 5%, that's the sort of growth path. If you add to that 1.5%, well, we be a country that will grow at 6.5% for the future, and this will have a tremendous impact in the whole economic performance and social performance. Now, what do the critics say? And this is important for you to understand it. The critics have been changing their focus of attack. First, they were criticizing that we were going to negotiate peace with impunity. We have said since the very beginning there will be no impunity. We have obligations, international obligations. We are part of the Treaty of Rome. These have some standards and that we have to comply with. And we have our own constitution that forbids any government to decree amnesties for war crimes, for crimes against humanity. So there will be no impunity. Well, they insisted, no, we are negotiating. The result, you have it there. There's no impunity. We are adjusting, or the agreement, it goes beyond the international standards in terms of what the international standards require. It goes beyond our own constitution, and so we are going to have justice for the most responsible, which was exactly what we said we're going to do since the very beginning. Then they focused their criticism on that we are going to reduce and disappear the armed forces, the police. We have said this is nonsense. This is not even a point of discussion. We have not discussed, and we will not discuss the future with of our armed forces, our police, with the FARC, and has never been a subject of discussion and will never be. We are going to modernize our armed forces, because when we have peace, well, we don't need special counter-guerrilla elite units. We will need a normal army for a normal country. And that's why we pledged a couple of days ago that when we reach peace, we can afford to send our soldiers for peacekeeping missions in the rest of the world. And we made a pledge in the meeting 2 days ago here in the United Nations. Then they focused their criticism and their opposition that we were giving away the country to communism and to what they call the Castro-Chavismo model. And I said, where is this nonsense written? Why do you say this? So slowly they have been losing their ground, because the arguments against the peace process have been disappearing, because reality has showed them that there is no real opposition. The latest opposition is that we are allowing the responsibles of crimes against humanity to be free of a real punishment, and that we are focusing in trying to get some people in jail, when specific political opponents in jail, which is, again, nonsense. This is has nothing to do with what we negotiated. The agreements are there. They are written. Everybody can study them. Everybody can analyze them, and you will see that it's a very good agreement, that, again, it performs with the international standards. And I'll tell you some inside information. I had in my delegation the negotiation for the justice item, which was the most difficult one in any peace process. When do you draw the line between peace and justice? Where do you draw it? Is the most difficult question. And the place where we drew the line today performs with international standards, and I put a professor, an American professor, a professor of the University of Notre Dame, very well respected by the international community, very well respected by the human rights organizations, to be part of the Colombian delegation. And I said to him, his name is Doug Castle, I said, Professor Castle, you're going to be my guarantor that everything that we negotiate will have the acceptance of the international community. And he played that role. And every item that we were agreeing, said, no, this is acceptable, this is acceptable. So my message to you is, you can rest assured that this is the best deal that Colombia can do in its history, that this is going to be very positive, that Colombia is going to take off, and that if we have had a good performance so far, we will have an even better performance when peace is reached.
Thank you for elaborating. I'm sure a lot of the audience hasn't actually been able to read the agreements. And I have to tell you, if you're here in the United States and you want to find out about the agreement and you start Googling it, you can be quite confused about what actually has been agreed to. So depending on which publication you read, there's different answers to the following questions. So if you could clarify, or do we even know at this point in the process, because it's not a done deal, it's got the 6-month deadline. So those convicted of war crimes, crimes against humanity, they will get reduced sentences for confession, or they won't. They will be able to hold positions in office, or they won't. They could get extradited to the US, or they won't. Do we know those answers at this point?
Of course we know those answers. The most responsible will get reduced sentences if they tell the truth, if they assume their responsibility, and if they repair the victims. If they collaborate with what is called transitional justice, they will get reduced sentences, minimum of 5 years, maximum of 8 years. The ones that don't collaborate, hide the truth, don't assume responsibility, will get a sentence of 20 years. So that answers your question. Will they get what type of sentence? It's agreed. The words are there. Effective restriction of their liberty. Effective restriction of their liberty. So they are not going to simply go free, as some people are saying. Will they do politics? Of course. That's the whole purpose of this peace process, for them to lay down their arms and continue their ideological struggle through legal means. That's exactly what a peace process is all about. Of course they can do politics, and they will have all the guarantees to do politics, but without arms, without violence. Will they get extradited to the United States? No. They will not get extradited to the United States because nobody is going to lay down their arms to come to the United States jail for 40 years. And therefore, they will not be extradited to the United States. And that's my responsibility, and I've told them, you will not be extradited, and I will not extradite it, because it's a peace process. It's a process where they are giving up their arms in exchange for X, Y, and Z, and that's what I'm doing.
So could Timoshenko end up running for president?
Why not? But I don't think he'll get many votes.
You'd be unhappy with that outcome, is what you're saying.
Sorry?
You'd be unhappy with that outcome, is what you're saying.
No. I mean, let's be.
I was making a joke. You don't have to answer.
Let's be realistic. They will continue if they can convince. They're not very popular in Colombia, and if they're convinced that the Marxist-Leninist ideology is what is convenient for Colombia, well, they might convince a few, but I don't think they will have a big support in that respect. But their right to do politics without arms is what any democracy will give every citizen. So that's what we want, for them to do away with their idea that they can continue fighting for their ideals through violent means. And we are the last and only armed conflict in the whole of the Western Hemisphere. And this is extremely important. We have about 22 different conflicts around the world. The only one that has a large probability of being successful in a negotiation process is the Colombian one. That's why the whole international community is supporting Colombia and supporting the government of Colombia and supporting the process. There's not one single country that has not expressed deliberately expressed in clear terms their support for the process. All of Latin America, the United States has a special envoy which has been very effective. The whole of Europe, China, Russia, every country in the world is pushing because the world needs a success story, and this is a success story.
Will there be a referendum on whatever the final deal is, and do you think it will pass?
The people will have the opportunity to say yes or no. And this is something that I'm not obliged to do. Legally, I can negotiate a peace process without having to go to the people, but I promised since the very beginning that I will do it. I negotiated that with the FARC. We will agree on some kind of a way for the people to express themselves through the ballot, if they like it or not. So the answer is yes. I've never even doubted that I will comply with this promise, and yes, we will put the agreement to the people when we have the agreement ready.
The reparation process, who's going to end up paying for that?
Well, we are already paying for that. We have repaired more than 500,000 Colombians, victims, monetarily already. It's a huge cost.
But will the FARC contribute? Are they going to contribute?
If they have the resources to do it, of course. They have to repair. If they have the resources, yes. Some people say, well, they have huge amounts of money hidden. And I ask, well, if they do, I've been after those funds for, I think, 9, 10 years. With the CIA, the FBI, the DEA, the British intelligence, the Israeli intelligence, we're all being after those months. We haven't found it. If you find it, you be sure that I will grab it and give it to the victims. But we have not found those millions or trillions of dollars that people say they have. Now, they will have to repair. And they said they will repair. They will go and do the work that they need, that for the tribunal, for the international justice, means a way to repair the victims. Go and demine, go and help in the construction of the social fabric in the areas where they operated. There are different forms of reparations that they have to do and they have to repair.
How did you put your head around what is, I think, the toughest thing when you're negotiating, which is you want peace, and peace is going to cost? And so perhaps there's a unit of impunity. I used to be the finance minister, so so if you think of it as a currency unit, what's the exchange rate there? Like, how far do you go in terms of how much impunity you give in exchange for peace?
Well, I put it this way, and thank you for your question. Put it the other way. How much will it cost Colombia to maintain this war for 30 years more, or 40 years more? What's the cost against the price of a reduction in sentences to a few people, no more than 50 people or 60 of the most responsible? How much does it cost to continue this factory of victims, producing death every day, displacing people every day, versus this very marginal cost? And I can assure you, and history teaches us, that war is always more costly than peace. And the peace for any society is the most important objective to achieve. And this is a lesson that history has given us, and in Colombia we are fed up with war and we want peace, and we will achieve peace.
So I'm going to move on from the peace process. We are going to take audience questions, so if there's more you want, be ready. But if we can move on to, there's so many issues that Latin America in particular are facing because of what's going on with the plunge in commodities, the weakness that we see in China, the decline that you're seeing as a result of the decline in revenues that you're seeing as a result of the decline in oil prices. What are you doing to offset that? How do you deal with it?
5.5 years ago, when I won the presidency, we set up some objectives. One of them was, let's strengthen our economy, the fundamentals of the economy, and let's try to get into this virtuous circle whereby you have your fiscal accounts in equilibrium. This will give confidence to the markets and improve our access to the markets in general. This will create more investment. This will promote investment. Investment will promote more growth, and more growth will help us to increase our revenues and maintain the fiscal equilibrium. That was 5.5 years ago. So we started putting in place the correct policies. We even approved the constitutional reform, constitutional amendment that puts the fiscal responsibility at the same level as the other fundamental rights in our Constitution. That was followed by a fiscal rule which obliges the government to maintain fiscal responsibility, fiscal restraint. And we were able to get into this virtuous circle. For example, last year, we were #1 in growth in the whole of Latin America, or the medium and large countries. Investment, the first quarter of this year, was the highest ever. No more than 30% of our GDP investment. This is the highest figure. We some years ago dreamed about being similar to the Asian countries in that respect. We achieved that
That's not FDI, right? That's just overall investment, or is that?
Raw investment, yes, which is the crucial.
Yeah, sure.
And in foreign direct investment, we also broke all the records. More than $16 billion last year. This is the highest figure ever. And so we created more employment, more than 3 million employments, and we reduced poverty by a percentage which has not been equaled by any other country, more than 12%. So we were in this virtuous circle, and then the price of oil went down. We depend a lot on oil for our revenue, for our exchange rate, and also for our fiscal revenue. What did we do? We need to maintain the principles and the fundamentals. So we have to adjust ourselves, and we did that. And we took the decisions to reduce investment, reduce expenditure, reduce the dependency of the government in the revenues that were provided by oil and the mineral activities. The year 2013, the dependency on this in this sector for our revenues was about 20%. For next year's budget, the budget we approved a few days in Congress, it's 2.5%, from 20 to 2.5%. And we made a combination, always following the parameters of the fiscal rule, and because we need to maintain the confidence in the future of our economy. And I think we have succeeded in terms that we launched a bond issue just last week, $1.5 billion. It was oversubscribed. The credit agencies maintained their confidence in the Colombian economy. We are going to grow this year between 3 and 3.5%, which is higher than any other country, or medium or large country in Latin America. And we are going to maintain our fiscal accounts within the fiscal rule. So I think we're doing the correct things, the correct formula to weather this, to survive this international storm. And I say to many people, and I learned this in the Navy, when I was in the Navy, if you have a port of destiny, you can use all the winds, even if hurricanes, in your favor. And we're trying to convert this situation into an opportunity, and I will tell you why. when you compare the Asian countries, the Asian tigers, why were they so successful? One of the reasons, and we discussed this with one of your high officials in the Treasury that was in Colombia some weeks ago, it was because one of the fundamental reasons is that they always had their currency undervalued. That helped them a lot to conquer the international markets, to conquer and be export-led economies. Colombia opened its economy 25 years ago. I was the first minister of foreign trade. I came here to the Council of the Americas, Susan must remember, saying we're going to open the economy. And it was very difficult at that time, very difficult. And since then, one of the criticisms that every Minister of Finance and every Minister of Trade has had is we have an overvalued currency. Well, now we don't. And it's a tremendous opportunity because we were approaching the Dutch disease. I say we had a Dutch cold because we were becoming too dependent on oil and minerals. Well, now we have a tremendous opportunity to strengthen the other sectors of the economy, be a more diversified economy. We're making huge investments in what I think is the most important long-term priorities: infrastructure, education, technology, and that's where we're focusing our efforts and our interest. And I think that's the way we're trying to solve this this storm that the region and the world is going through.
We're going to take questions from the audience, and I'm not sure quite how it's working. We're going to there's a gentleman here with a microphone. There's a woman over here with a microphone. So raise your hand. As I prepare and find the first person, FDI. So you're talking about FDI last year. This year's very different than last year. Is it going to keep pace? Is it going to be up or down?
Well,
what's the level of it thus far?
We're not going to have the foreign direct investment that we had last year. Mostly the oil and the minerals, but especially the oil has gone down. But the FDR in the rest of the sectors has gone up, comparatively speaking. So we will not have the same levels that we had last year. But so far we have had not only foreign direct investment in production, but also portfolio investment has been very good so far this year.
I see someone with a microphone here. How many microphones are in the room? Two? Two. Okay, so woman here in the front has a microphone. Please identify yourself.
I am Luz Leguizamo, and I'd like to welcome you to New York City, and I'm very proud of you for the efforts that you are doing regarding the peace treaty with the FARC. But now I have a big question for you. I have family in Venezuela, and they are very fearful of their lives and their futures. And I'd like to ask you, what is your government doing to protect Colombians who go to the borders between Colombia and Venezuela? My family tells me that many Colombians have been killed. What are you doing for them?
No, I don't have information of Colombians being killed. I have information of Colombians being mistreated and their rights abused. And that's why we directly protested with the Venezuelan government. I personally told President Maduro, you can close the border, you have the right to do it, you're a sovereign country. You can deport Colombians which are illegal. What you cannot do is vulnerate their fundamental rights. You have to abide by your own laws and international laws. And we will not accept the abuses that your people are committing against Colombians that are being deported. This has stopped, as far as I know, in the sense that they are not abusing them anymore. On the contrary, they are now saying that they will accept them again. I don't know if they will do or not, but this has been stopped. I have no idea of Colombians being killed. I don't know where you got your information, but I have no information in that respect. And of course, Our first priority has been, since these problems with Venezuela in the last weeks emerged, is to protect the Colombians that are being abused.
Somebody else, I see a hand up back there, if you want to bring a microphone. Please identify yourself.
Yes, Andrew Qualley, Sidley Austin. I've been a fan of Colombia since I worked in the Ministry of Finance in 1967. That makes me 52 years old. Thank you, Mr. President, for all you've been doing and the bravery that you've shown in spite of a lot of opposition from friends of ours in Colombia that we all know. My question is, if a significant portion of the FARC do not turn in their arms and deliver themselves, what does that do to the process? Do the leaders have an obligation to deliver these people? And if they fail to deliver, will they have a less of a reduction in sentence? Or is there some other incentive that is available to ensure that all the FARC elements do surrender or turn themselves in and turn their arms in? Thanks.
This is a good question, and we have been monitoring and following this aspect very closely for many years already. Do the FARC Secretariat, do they still have the command and control over their people? And they do. They do. The proof is right there. When they declared their unilateral ceasefire, in all of the Colombian territory, that was complied with. So there's the real proof that they have command and control. Can we guarantee that every single FARC member will go into the peace deal? No. But whoever remains outside will be attacked, will be subjected to the military and the judicial strength of the state as any criminal band. And the criminal bands, we're fighting them every single day. They will not have the FARC political trademark. They will be simple criminals, and they will be treated as such, as simple criminals. That is the situation with that respect.
I would like to ask you if you agree with the Attorney General, who has suggested that Mr. Uribe, former President Uribe, be tried in the transitional justice framework which has been set up for the FARC. Thank you.
No, I don't agree. The presidential, what do you call it, fuero? How do you say that in English? Fuero, the special protection, special procedures that are applied to presidents are not being questioned, and every president will maintain its special legal immunity, or not immunity, privilege of who is going to judge them. So I see no change, and there's nothing in the agreement that changes the stature of any president in the tribunal that is created.
Now that he's brought up President Uribe, how does it feel to see your former, I'm a journalist, right? And you're a former journalist, so, we have this desire to, the moth toward the flame. The Twitter storm that he has, in which he has just ripped you, the agreement, it's been, on a personal level, how does it feel to see him to do that?
Well, it doesn't affect me because I don't read his Twitters. I have told President Uribe, let's get together. Let's work together. We have a country to work for. You've done great things. He has done great things, and I'm the first one to recognize him. Why don't we work together? You wanted to make peace. You offered the guerrillas much more than what I've given them, and the proof is there. Why do you criticize me now? I've told him, what is it that really concerns you in this process? We can sit down, and I will assure you that everything that you are saying about the process is not true. That what we're negotiating is something sensible and good for the country and for our future and the future of your kids and the future of my kids and the future of the sons and daughters of every Colombian. I've told him, let's leave any personal animosity to one side. It's your responsibility and it's my responsibility. I've sent envoys to talk to him, even the special envoy of the United States and the US ambassador sat with him, with the chief negotiator, with my Minister of Defense, to respond concern by concern. And the ambassador and the chief and the special envoy said to me, they answered every concern, every question, but he maintains his position. Well, it's a political position. With that, I can do very little. And from my side, I'm always open. I think it's what the country needs. It would be for his own benefit, for my own benefit. Maybe the only company or only person who would be hurt by something like that is Twitter, because then he cannot tweet so much. So.
We have time for one more question.
My name's Daniel Volberg. I have two questions on the economic outlook for Colombia and the strategy for going forward. You know, if you look at the past decade or so, Colombia's made great strides. You know, we've had a process of privatization, fiscal improvement and responsibility, took control of inflation. Your reserves have grown dramatically. Those are all great achievements. But they were all, in part, tied to a commodity supercycle, and we've seen, when we've seen oil prices going up, and that helped, those tailwinds helped Colombia. Now that oil is back down, what is the strategy going forward? You know, we have the institutional makeup, you know, the central bank and inflation targeting, the fiscal rule, et cetera. But the bigger question is, how do you provide economic growth? And what's the strategy? What are going to be the pillars for creating growth going forward? And then the second question,
Quickly.
maybe related, is do you see any room for structural reform, in particular fiscal reform? And what kinds of reform?
We have identified since the very beginning, 6 years ago, some sectors that are going to be the engines of growth: housing, infrastructure, agribusiness. And those have been sectors that have been very dynamic. Those sectors, for example, were the ones that we identified in order to do some special investment in the recent past in order to have growth in this difficult time, because those sectors have been proven to be effective in encouraging growth. We did a special project in housing that will complement what we did in the first 4 years. It has been extremely successful. Housing for the lower middle class with subsidies of the government. There's a big demand there. As you know, housing pools 32 industries, and it's a big promoter of growth. The infrastructure of the investment we're doing in infrastructure is unprecedented in the history of Colombia. It's the biggest investment in the whole of Latin America, close to $15 billion. And that investment and those projects are only starting to be realized at the end of this year, because in the last years, we have been structuring them, we have been planning them, well planned, so they can work. Many of you here are involved with this project. That by itself will add 1.5% to our growth rate in the next 5 to 6 years, while the projects will be in execution or they've been developed. And after the projects, after the infrastructure is finished, these projects are finished, the increment in our growth would be around 0.8 to 1% for higher competitiveness. The agribusiness has a huge potential because half of the country is still unproductive. It's like the United States in the 18th century. You had the Wild West to conquer, where we have half of Colombia to conquer. And why have we not done it? Because of the conflict. Because it's many areas in Colombia where you don't have any investment, you don't have public goods because of the conflict. Once the conflict finishes, we can go and start producing food for a country, for a world that needs more and more food every day. So we have connected the whole of the Colombia. This is something that people thought it was impossible. And we said, no, it is possible, and we did it, connecting the whole of the 1,100 municipalities with fiber optic and broadband in order to use also technology in order to increase our productivity. We are making huge investments in education, which is a long-term, most important investment. And the first thing we're doing is investment in the infrastructure in education. We have a lack of good schools in order to strengthen the amount of hours, to increase the amount of hours that the kids go to school. We are doing in the next 3 years what we were going to do in 70 years. We're going to build 30,000 new classrooms, 1,500 new schools in the next 3 years. This is already in motion. So you have many engines of growth to maintain our growth rate, and with peace, we'll do much more, because then we can expand what we're doing now. As I said at the beginning, imagine Colombia, if we've done what we've done with a war, what we can do with peace. And your last question, will there be a structural fiscal reform? The answer is yes. We need it. It's necessary. It's not urgent, but we're going to do it. We're going to do it correctly, step by step. We have a group of experts who are studying this reform, who are going to make us a proposal. We have already received proposals from the IDB, from the OECD, and we're going to package it, choose the best combination possible, then have it discussed with the private sector. Any fiscal reform is going to be, and this is very important for you to take note of, is going to be business friendly, investment friendly, because our tax system is an accumulation of small fiscal reforms that have been done out of urgency. And we have ended up with a very inefficient system, a very unequal system, and I think this is the opportunity to address this issue and leave the country also with the best fiscal and tax system possible.
Mr. President, thank you so much for doing this today.
Thank you.